Good morning. I'm Jason Stanton. This is my morning musing for today, Wednesday, April 28th. I read an article yesterday in the New York Times. It was called How Humanity Gave Itself an Extra Life. Piqued my interest. It says between 1920 and 2020, the average human lifespan doubled. A lifespan that was pretty static. It stayed between 30 and 40 years old for all of recorded history. All of a sudden in the last 100 years, doubled. We don't think about that enough. We don't talk about that enough. Of course, our systems and our lives would be so different than what even our grandparents knew. The subheading, it says, science mattered to doubling the lifespan, but so did activism. And that also made me wonder, because lifespans doubling on face would seem to be a scientific achievement, right? But it's also a political achievement. It's a moral achievement. It's so much more than just science, although it is also science. In 1918, this was a picture painted by the article. I should find who wrote it. Let me see here. It's in the health issue, part of the New York Times Magazine. Oh, by Stephen Johnson. Here it is. Okay, so in 1918, the author says, imagine seeing people drop like flies from H1N1, the influenza outbreak of 1918. And you see people dying just all over from that. And at the same time, World War I is still raging. And so you're seeing so much death and destruction, and from disease, from war, from all sorts of angles and perspectives. The future would have looked very bleak. But the article says the period from 1916 to 1920 marked the last point in which a major reversal in global life expectancy would be recorded. So since then, there has not been a reversal in global life expectancy. If you were born in 1918, your life expectancy would have been 41, on average around the world. Born today, life expectancy on average is in the 80s. That's amazing. I'm just going to read this paragraph. Another reason we have a hard time recognizing this kind of progress is that it tends to be measured not in events, but in non-events. I thought this could be amusing all unto itself. Think of the things that haven't happened in your life. The smallpox infection that didn't kill you at age 2. The accidental scrape that didn't give you a lethal bacterial infection. The drinking water that didn't poison you with cholera. In a sense, human beings have been increasingly protected by an invisible shield. One that's been built piece by piece over the last few centuries, keeping us ever safer and further from death. It protects us through countless interventions, big and small. The chlorine in our drinking water, the ring vaccinations that rid the world of smallpox, the data centers mapping new outbreaks all across the planet. A crisis like the global pandemic of 2020-2021 gives us a new perspective on all that progress. Pandemics have an interesting tendency to make that invisible shield suddenly, briefly visible. For once, we're reminded of how dependent everyday life is on medical science, hospitals, public health authorities, drug supply chains, and more. And an event like the COVID-19 crisis does something else as well. It helps us perceive the holes in that shield, the vulnerabilities, the places where we need new scientific breakthroughs, new systems, new ways of protecting ourselves from emergent threats. It goes on to say, usually the credit for doubling our lifespan goes to 3 things: vaccines, the germ theory, and antibiotics. But it's not all about science, as I said before. Activists, public intellectuals, and legal reformers were the ones who got this stuff to everyone. And that's, I think, the thing that I certainly wouldn't have thought about without this article, is that Yes, the science was important, but how do we get the science to everyone? Just think of how we don't get food to everyone. We don't get money to everyone. That we got vaccines, germ theory, and antibiotics into the lives of all humanity so that we could actually not have smallpox anymore. What we figured out when it came to health is that everyone's health is interconnected. And that's why it was in the interest of people in power to make sure that the powerless got vaccinated and are treated as well, because those people, them, their health matters to my health, so I will happily treat you. What if we recognize that our wealth was interconnected in the same way? Or what if we could figure out that our happiness is interconnected in the same way? It's like, how can I be happy with my 2 shirts when I see that person with none? How can I be content with my wealth when I see the abject poverty of another? Health and the way we've applied that sense of interconnectedness, it could inform the quality and equality of the rest of our lives too. So we should be musing on that some more, seeing how the ways we've tackled health in the last 100 years, which has doubled life expectancy, maybe some of those same principles could be carried over into other parts of our lives that would, well, just make our lives a lot better. And so we keep faith alive